My name is Neil Lewis. I'm a certified scaling up coach, and we work at any given time with many organizations around the world who are on a growth journey or looking to grow out themselves, grow out their companies. And in today's webinar, we're going to be reflecting on a really powerful tool that we use actually often at this time of year as we're starting to think about the strategic planning cycle for the year ahead in 2023. And it's called the Seven Strata of Strategy. And in many respects, it really roots back to some of the 4 decisions that we really help organizations master. And they are people, strategy, execution, and cash. And what I'd like to do, just as a quickie, just to have you sort of reflecting on it, if you'd be so kind, could you be kind enough to put into the chat bar what your number 1 challenge is right now? So if your biggest challenge is around people, please put people into the chat bar. If you're hurting for strategy right now and you haven't got a distinct strategy, then please put strategy in. If you find it difficult to execute your plan consistently, then put execution in the box. And if it's cash that you're hurting for, then we'll put cash in there as well. It's always just a good area just to see where everybody is right now in their business. So Leon will be keeping an eye on this. Give me a bit of feedback as we go through that. So thank you for doing that. First question that we always ask ourselves in the strategy section is, can you state your firm's strategy simply and straightforwardly? And if I was to ask many of your team, what the strategy was, would they be able to be consistent in coming back with a similar answer? And can't tell you how many times when we do this that we often get 6 different questions around the boardroom or around the senior team and 6 different answers. And it goes to show sometimes how challenging it is to be really succinct and consistent in what your firm's strategy is all about. And then once you have it, you've got to ask ourselves, is that strategy really driving out sustainable growth in revenues and in growth margins? So the 7 Strata strategy, for my mind, is a really powerful tool. And Leon, are you able to share a link, please, at some stage in the chat bar that the guys can then literally draw down the 7 Strata strategy form?
Yeah, there we go. It's in there now.
Is it? Brilliant. So yeah, this document that I'm putting up now, you're more than welcome just to click on it. You can download it and then use it to really sort of work it and apply it to your business as well. And for me, the 7 Strata of Strategy tool is all about getting clarity on your marketing strategy. And actually, more often than not, it's your marketing strategy that really informs your growth strategy and your overall business strategy. So we're just going to have a dive into this morning, and we're going to use one organization as we go through towards the end of it as a kind of as a case study. Now, you might like them or you might loathe them, but Ryanair is a very successful organization as an airline, and we have just used some of their 7 Strata of strategies just to give an example a bit later on, and just gives it some context. So first up in the 7 Strata of strategy is to have 1 or 2 words that you own, and that you own in the mind, and this is really important, of your core customer or of the key sort of slice of the market that you want to go for. And when you own those words, you kind of you really come front of mind. Once we've done that, and I said a few seconds ago, we need to really get clear about who it is, who's our core customer, and then apply what I call a brand promise and a guarantee to that customer. So whatever you're doing, you need to make sure that you have something that is meaningful, that solves a problem or a frustration that they may have, and then you can put a promise around it. So that's the second element. Third is having what we're going to call a catalytic mechanism, or what Jim Collins, or the author of Good to Great, has what he calls a catalytic mechanism. And that is something that underpins your brand promise, that gives you some skin in the game. If you don't deliver what you say you're going to do, then you are going to guarantee to your consumer or your customer some money back or some time back or whatever it is that gives you some skin in the game. We call that the brand promise guarantee. Then we try and get to be as distinct as we can be on your strategy, into having a one phrase strategy that makes it ridiculously easy for everybody across the organization to understand very clearly where you're heading and why you're heading there. So that's all very well and good, but if we haven't got a distinctive approach, a differentiated approach to our business, then we will struggle, because probably the only thing that we can fight on is price. Now, the example we're going to use there, I know, is Ryanair, and one of their key drivers, one of their differentiating factors, it is actually price, and they are or were, probably still are, I'd argue, a model of cheap flights, but that's one of their key differentiating activities. Next one we need to then look at is the X factor, and for us, this is almost your secret sauce. What is your secret sauce, or what underpins your business model that gives you maybe a 10x to 100x underlying competitive advantage? And if you can discover that, then it gives you a significant advantage in the marketplace. And then finally, making sure we've got some metrics that underline that in terms of what we're going to call the profit per X and the big, hairy, audacious goal. Now, appreciate there's quite a few technical terms in there. The X factor, profit per X, what does that mean? What does a big, hairy, audacious goal mean? And over the next 40 minutes or so, my goal is just to dig into this in a bit more depth, use some examples to really underline that in a bit more detail. So let's get into each one of these, as I said, in a bit more detail. So first thing we want to do in the mind of our consumer or our core customer is own a word or two. So if I were to come up with the word safety in terms of that, what brand or what company comes to mind? And you're welcome now to come off mute and then fire off whatever answers you think come to mind. So when you talk about safety, what brand comes to mind?
Volvo.
Volvo. Why on earth does Volvo come to mind?
Just years and years, I guess, of reinforcement of their brand positioning and the fact they make cars that pass crash tests better than anyone else.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And albeit I don't know if they've been doing so much advertising over the last few years around safety, Volvo still is front of mind because of that consistency of messaging that they put that actually gets into our frontal cortex of our brain. We absolutely sort of come back to that the whole time. Interestingly, I think they actually now, just read about, was it this week or last week, are now starting to test female dummies, as opposed to all their testing in the past have been with a male dummy, and they're now using a female dummy in the crash test just to see whether or not they need to design cars in a slightly different way. So they're still on it when it comes to safety. So that was safety. What about search? What name comes front of mind when I put the word search out?
Google.
Google. Yeah, I mean, you could have said Yahoo, Ask Jeeves, I guess a few other sort of organizations or somebody that's in the business searching on maps, but no, Google tends to be the brand now that comes front of mind when we ever talk about search, and they pretty much are the search engine now. So that, and I guess there's a few others as well. I maybe if I mentioned vacuum cleaner, what brand comes to mind when we talk about a vacuum cleaner?
Well, Hoover or Dyson.
Hoover. Dyson.
Exactly. It would always, when I was growing up, Mum would say, "Get the Hoover out." It wasn't get the vacuum cleaner out. It was get the Hoover out. We're going to do some hoovering. It wasn't, that. So that becomes synonymous with that. And again, just how powerful that can be in our mind's eye. So again, thanks for that. Those brands, and you rightly say, probably now it's get the Dyson out. Is synonymous with that particular category. So one of the things I want you to think about is, in your respect, if people wanted to search for you and search for your business, what are the couple of words that they would be using to figure out what they are looking for as maybe a value proposition or a need that needs satisfying? Once you word that out, then you need to make sure that you're easily to find, be it on Google, the words that you own, that people can search for it, and you come up and you rank reasonably highly on that. So I think we've got Robert on the call today. Robert, what is it that you do?
Well, it depends on the day of the week, Neil.
Right.
Currently, I have worked with Neil, so I did his amazing course, but I've just qualified as a mediator, having been a litigator for many years. So my future lies in alternative dispute resolution, if that answers your question.
It does brilliantly. And I think, again, what you want to be able to get in terms of those two words is all around about, if someone's looking for a mediator, you want to be absolutely front of mind for that and knows that particular word. And if you want to be there for dispute resolution in your marketplace, you want to be front of mind there as well. And remind me, what's your marketplace?
Well, I'm using your Ryanair analogy, where I can't cater for the top end of mediation because that is dominated by the big law firms in the city. I'm going for your sort of cheap and cheerful, you get what you see in the tin mediation, where I can give a fixed fee and maybe small businesses who need quick resolution without spending a fortune in litigation.
Great. Yeah. And your fan box is also somewhere around Westminster as well. So you're really clear then in terms of where you're going to be found and who you're going to look to. So thank you for that, Robert. So again, once we've done that, we then need to be really clear about who is our core customer. So I don't know if any of you have gone about really defining who your core customer is, but by doing that, you're able to fully understand what are their needs, what are their frustrations, what are the things that you can potentially have as a value proposition that's going to meet those needs or frustrations. So for this particular example, an organization we work with, a company called JBro, they're in the business of making it easy for building contractors, and building contractors need things fast. They want it done right and it done first time. They don't want hassles. And JBro created in their mind Pat. Pat is their core customer. And Pat actually sits in the JBro boardroom. Boy, so he sits there, a cardboard cutout of Pat sits in the JBro boardroom. And the reason for this is every time they're making a decision, they are honing in terms, is this a good decision for Pat? Is this going to make Pat's life easier? Is this going to reduce Pat's hassles? Or actually, this is a dumb decision because it's going to make it more difficult for Pat, or it's going to take us longer to get the materials out to Pat for which you want. So that, again, just refining that. I think I've got someone else on the call. I just saw it came on recently. Connor, are you on the call from Liars?
I'm here, Neil. Yeah.
So just give us a quick heads up on what it is that you do at Liars, and then maybe what you believe is your core customer.
Sure. So our core business is non-alcoholic spirits and sparkling wines. So we've recreated the entire back bar of spirits, from gin all the way through to absinthe, and offer those now to consumers in a non-alcoholic format. So basically, when you want to kind of have a drink on a Monday night, but you shouldn't have alcohol, we can still offer you a gin and tonic or a Negroni, just without the impacts of alcohol. So that's in a nutshell what we do. We also have a sparkling Prosecco style product as well. So look, there's lots of different routes in, I guess, to our positioning, but very broadly, we are offering adults delicious flavors that allow them to be more mindful when they are consuming drinks, basically, and those flavors replicate some of the best flavors that mankind's created. So that's basically what we do and kind of how we go to market. It's about offering people choice to moderate.
And who would you describe then as your core customer?
That is an interesting one, because it can be anyone, obviously over the age of 18, but anyone who is looking to be more mindful about their health and well-being, basically, and that really ladders from 18 to 80, and everything in between.
And at some time you then probably then get down to, from that broad area of our customer, to actually get even more precise in terms of what people who maybe are more health conscious, or people who want to be able to drink and go out to a social event, but they're responsible for driving back or whatever it is. So I guess there's different occasions that you are looking to satisfy.
Yeah, absolutely. There's many different occasions now, from lunchtime to I'm doing a triathlon tomorrow, and it's about offering an alternative for when people want to be more mindful about what they put in their bodies, basically.
Beautiful. So again, for those
Connor, can you hear me? It's Robert here. I was reading there seems to be an interest or an increase in for non-alcoholic drinks. How are you dealing with that?
That's the trend that we're playing into, Robert. So look, if you look at where the beer category was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you couldn't really get a good non-alcoholic beer, and now the supermarket shelves are full of them. So we're in the spirit space, so which is probably 3 or 4 years behind the beer movement, but we're offering now a wider and wider range of alcoholic non-alcoholic spirit alternatives to consumers. So it's a big growing market at the moment.
That's a good question again from Robert, because actually strategy is all about as well spotting trends and analyzing trends and seeing where there are gaps in the market. And I would imagine, just close out on this one, Connor, that you're probably recognizing that non-alcoholic spirits, I guess non-alcoholic beers, are some of the very fastest growing categories in that sector.
Yeah, that's correct. And the world is drinking less alcohol. If you look at alcohol consumption, it's on a downwards trend as well. So, but that doesn't mean conversely that people don't want to socialize. So it's the confluence of a few different trends, really. And we always kind of say alcohol's having its tobacco moment as well. When I grew up, smoking was bad. If you grow up now and you're a young consumer, drinking's bad. And there's a lot of government public health messages that go out to, particularly for younger consumers, to encourage them not to drink at all or as heavily as previous generations. So yeah, there's lots of different things that are triggering trend.
Yeah, beautiful. So going back to our core customer here, Pat has a number of things that he's after in terms of he wants things done right, he wants it done fast. So the next thing we need to do is declare a number of brand promises that understands the frustrations that someone like Pat has and addresses those in your way, that's going to make sure that you deliver what's important to a Pat. So this particular example, and I don't know if any of you have ever been in the Philippines at all, but historically, the big frustration in the Philippines, if you took a ferry, is that you were unlikely to arrive in your destination, which is not that good, specifically if your ferry sank. Not much investment had gone into ferries, and if you did make it, it took forever and a day to get there, and they weren't particularly comfortable and they weren't that convenient. So this particular company, Fastcat, invested an awful lot of money in a modern fleet of ferries. Secondly, looked at the whole way in terms of the speed they were going to get there, and then the different regions that they were going to have their ferry from, just to be able to address a need in the market. But where they very cleverly brought out their brand promise is in the fact that they were very safe, very fast, very convenient, and I would suggest very clever in the way that they brought that marketing message around. But again,
I particularly like that one because they use some poetic tricks, because use of alliteration F in fast, very, very, very repeating the words ferry, and ferry also rhymes with very.
Very good. Yeah, and again, it's just about being distinctive, and then once they've declared their brand promise, they market it everywhere because they want to make sure that people are going to use them, because actually I want to get somewhere fast. If you can promise me I'm going to get there fast, you promise me that I'm going to arrive as opposed to sink and whatever, and that's great. One of the other organizations I work with is a company called the City Bin Company, based out in Galway. They're in Dublin as well. And Jean Brown, because bearing in mind, in the UK, we get bins paid up for as part of our council tax or our rates or whatever. In Ireland, it's a competitive market. So if you don't do a good job, you can go to another bin company down the road and swap to them. So they understand that everyone wants the job done right and wants it done right each and every time. So interestingly, they're actually more of a customer service company that just happens to empty bins than they are a bin company. And they don't want to be an organization that's always got excuses or sad stories. And if they ever break their promise, you don't pay for that service that week or that month or whatever. So it's an interesting one. And again, this notion of having a triple promise or 3 promises is probably better than 2 and better than 4 as well. Anybody who's ever stayed away in a Premier Inn will probably have seen some of their advertising around it being a great night's sleep guaranteed. Just a quick, before I go into a couple of slides around that, who do we think is the core customer for a Premier Inn? Who do you think is a core customer for the Premier Inn?
I'd say, anybody travelling on business would be one, but also, anybody who just wants to stay over somewhere cheaply and know that it's a nice place and they're going to get the same type of quality and service everywhere they go.
Brilliant. I would say exactly that, Caroline. You're going to have somebody, predominantly, I think, business people who want to make sure they wake up refreshed. That's the reason that they're staying over. Some of that's good value. Then you're going to get families and others who just want a good value, comfortable stay, and with lots of consistency. So I think you're absolutely right around that. But they understand that if they are going to be able to put a promise to this, that they need to have some sort of operational things that are going to make us have a great night's sleep. So guys, just what would you need to do in a hotel in order to ensure that your guests have a great night's sleep?
You froze for a second, Neil, but I think you're back in.
Okay, did you hear what I just said, what the question was?
No, we didn't. We missed the question.
Okay, yeah. Apologies. I've just moved to a very rural part of the world, so we've used Elon Musk Starlink as a solution. From time to time, the satellite moves from one to another, so it is a slight occupational hazard. A question I posed, and that's why I was waiting for an answer that makes sense now, is if we were running a hotel chain like Premier Inn and we were giving the promise that you'd have a great night's sleep, what would we have to ensure was happening in our hotel and in the rooms?
You would need good acoustics, soundboarding and everything in the room, and appropriate triple glazing or whatever. You would also need good quality beds and linen so that people could get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, hot water bottle.
Hot water bottle, yeah. I think you can order a hot water bottle if that's it. Yeah, that's the case. Yeah, you've got that. A couple of other ideas.
Comfy pillows.
Yeah, I think again, we've all got slightly different needs for our pillows. So if you actually prefer a slightly heavier pillow or a slightly lighter pillow, that's certainly something they can provide as well. One more.
You don't want noisy neighbours.
you definitely don't want noisy neighbors. So that's something they could probably totally can't control. But I think everywhere you go around the hotel, you're going to get signs just saying, please be quiet, or, you know, on the doors, you just respect everyone else. And then
the satellites are not always brilliant. Neil, you're back with us. We lost you for a second.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You just again want to make sure that the TVs are only go up to a certain amount, so that you can't hear the TV from the next room, and they just say make sure you don't bang doors and all those sort of things. So yeah, absolutely. Everywhere around there, the communication, the operationally, your perfect pillow, your perfect bed, temperature control, triple glazing, obviously through that. Yeah, everything is considered, to make sure that they don't have to pay out on that promise. And that's probably something that puts some real pressure on the operations team when they first said this is going to be our promise, thinking, wow, how are we going to be able to guarantee, we're not spending millions of pounds every night, paying back out to people who haven't had a great night's sleep. So that's operationally how you fit around that. And then that's why you need to underpin your brand promise with some sort of guarantee that says, well, you make this promise, but what if you don't deliver? What are you going to do about it? And as I said, that's what Jim Collins originally talked about, having a catalytic mechanism, some sort of mechanism that puts some real pain into your operation, that if you don't deliver, then you are going to either pay out financially, or there's a no pay type of agreement, or there's something that gives you, as I said, some skin in the game. So again, Premier Inn talk about that guarantee. If you don't have a great night's sleep, please ask a team member, in terms of that, and we'll give you your money back. No questions. Well, they do ask a question, because I haven't invoked it out that often, but once or twice. And if anyone has stayed in the Premier Inn near St Pancras, they'll know it's right next to Euston Road, and there is one room that was particularly noisy. So they wanted to find out what room I was in, why was I woken up, and I'd imagine then they could put in extra glazing or something to try and mitigate not having to pay out in that room again. But that was that. So again, having a sort of brand promise guarantee is powerful. Good. Okay, and the next part of the Seven Strata strategy is what we call the one phrase strategy. If you were then to distill down all of what you do into 4 or 5 words, or even less, the less the better, that everybody across the organization gets exactly what you do and why you do it and what they can change around it to help you keep on task. That makes sense. So maybe some of you have at some stage shopped in an IKEA store. It probably is as close to purgatory as you get in terms of as an experience sometimes, but it does have a real need. By the way, again, let's just rein back for a second. Who do we think is the IKEA core customer?
Students, people on a budget.
Definitely people on a budget. So who they like to be?
Students.
Very much so. Students, yes.
I'd also say young professionals, anyone starting a family.
Definitely, Caroline. Yeah, exactly that young people. Probably a lot of it's their first sort of home, first flat. It's the first time they've had to furnish it. They're on a budget still, so they're looking for value, and I guess that's what they do. So beautiful. What would we suggest then is IKEA's one phrase strategy? What do you think IKEA's strategy is? And this is a bit of a clue in the photograph here as well.
Build it yourself.
Well, that is very much part of their value proposition, is that you've got to build it yourself. Not only have you got to go out and drive out to some out of town place that's in the middle of nowhere, you've got to walk about 7 miles to find out what you're looking for, but you've also got to build it yourself. Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the value proposition. Probably not quite the strategy or the words I'm looking for, but very good answer.
Is it flat pack?
Flat pack is exactly it. It is exactly their strategy, that they are able to actually make an uncommon amount of profit. They actually only have 7% of the market share in the category they exist in, but they enjoy 70% of the category profitability. So they only have 7% market share, but they enjoy 70% over the overall category profitability. And you can see why. Everything is flat pack. They're able to bring so much more product into a similar amount of space. And because they're out of town, means that they can have even bigger spaces. And you know what? You've got to do it yourself. You've got to make it yourself. So again, the fact that everything that informs the way they grow the business is around being flat packed is how they grow out their strategy. This next business is an American company. It's called Southwest Airlines, and fundamentally, it's where Michael O'Leary got the inspiration for Ryanair. And there's no hardship in terms of going out and stealing weekly someone else's business model. It's pretty much what Michael O'Leary did. But Southwest Airlines are the world's most profitable airline by a long way. And we may or may not have ever heard them, but they will outperform the likes of Emirates and British Airways and Singapore, by a factor of many. And they have a very, very straightforward strategy that the whole company, that the whole of their suppliers, that probably their customers don't necessarily understand, because this is something that is more internal than they're going to put out externally. And it's called Wheels Up. They know that if they've got a plane in the air, they're making money. If they've got a plane on the ground, they're not making money. It's as straightforward as that. So the faster they can turn around a plane and get it up in the air again, they're making money. The number of turns that a Southwest airline, the number of flights you typically do a day is around 8 flights a day. And by doing that, they're able to utilize this asset so many times and make money. But the pilots understand it, the cabin crew understand it, all the baggage handlers understand it, everybody in the whole of their business understands the whole notion of Wheels Up. So all their systems and processes designed to turn this thing around as quickly as possible. All their labor relations designed to have people on board that get rewarded for turning planes around as quickly as possible. And it's very straightforward. People, what's the strategy? Wheels Up. Everyone gets it. It's not convoluted. It's not a huge, great business plan. Everyone understands around that, which drives out their model. So it's just for you then to think about, what is it in terms of a strategy, a one phrase strategy that then really informs about what you do and how you do it. So that's the one phrase strategy. Point number 5 is all around, how are we going to be different? And this is where you create real value in your organization. As I said earlier on, if we just do everything the same as everyone else, then we really only got one thing to fight on, and that's price. And then we get down to the bottom. Whereas if you've actually got a number of things that you do differently to your market and to do things differently to your consumers, then that allows you to have some sort of competitive advantage within your marketplace. So what does that look like? Well, this is a number of tools we use. I'm not going to go over them today, but one of them is around value proposition. What are the jobs that need to be done by your customer? What are the jobs that need to be done by your consumer? And understanding those jobs that need to be done, and then what frustrations does your consumer currently have with the category, or does they have with your industry? And understanding that, what sort of pains do they have that they want to move away from? So if prices are going up in terms of that, then what sort of pain does that bring? If they want things done faster, what gains are they looking for? So we talk about the different pains that you want to move away from, or pain relief, and then gain creators. And that's from gaining more consumer insight or customer insight, being able to understand that, and then being able to innovate new products or categories that are going to give you a competitive advantage. So whether or not you're in the non-alcoholic drinks category, I think we've got Nigel Brown on today, who's looking to innovate within the whole speakers category and change the way that we listen to music in the future. If it's the way we're going to mediation, whatever it is, we want to make sure that we are different.
This is the thing that really intrigues me, and it's sort of caught my attention. I mean, I could elaborate, but I think this is really an interesting point.
Did I just freeze for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, apologies. Back on it now. Robert.
Sorry, Neil. I was just saying that I find this point really intriguing from what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
You see, in mediation, you were trained to bring people together, but you have to, let's say, what's called take them to the balcony to see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And as you know, I do a lot of creative stuff as well, writing poetry and music and stuff as a hobby. But the bigger picture for most people is like art, music, and poetry. I think that's what distinguishes us. And I'm trying to bring that into my mediation. In fact, it's becoming more of an industry than the mediation at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you know what? Again, being something like that actually brings some totally different approach to the way you get solutions is something to have to think about deeply about. Now, it'll only really work if when you do it, you test and measure it, and you uncover that actually it does work. It's a way of bringing about mediation faster and it's bring it in a more painless way. I guess mediation by default is often involved with stress and friction and all the other things that go with it. If you're able to find a solution that takes that away and finds a resolution more quickly, without the drama, I guess that's a great thing to be able to get into. So thank you for that. And what does it mean? It means as well that these are differentiating activities are also like to be what I call the chess moves. So strategy, again, if it in the chessboard, in the military arena, or in your business, what are those different chess moves that you're going to make that will really differentiate you and drive out the business growth? So I mentioned earlier on that we were going to look at a bit later on a completed 7 Strata strategy that we did a bit earlier on, which we pulled together for Ryanair, and we'll send you a copy of these slides anyway, so you can see this in a bit more depth. But just have a think for a second around Ryanair. What do you think are the differentiating activities that are behind the Ryanair business model? What are the sort of differentiating activities that make them different? By the way, there's one clue. Actually, there's a couple of clues in this particular photograph, but which we can reflect on. But let's have a few answers now. What do we think would be Ryanair's differentiating activities?
Well, there's loads of them.
Okay, well, just give us one, Nigel.
Yeah, there's loads of them. They go to a lot of destinations. They're right out there. They're not niche.
They're definitely not niche. And then, probably in terms of a bit like we saw a bit earlier on in FastCat, they are convenient. If you want to fly to lots of different destinations across Europe, and I guess their sandbox is Europe. They don't fly to America. They don't fly, to Australia. They just fly to Europe. But lots and lots of destinations, lots of opportunity. Thanks for that. What else have we got?
I know the answers, Neil, so I'm not going to shout out just yet. I think I've seen this slide before.
Yeah, have you been to a couple of our events? So you've seen this before. So who hasn't had a chance to get a point across yet? Just let's have a couple of from answers for maybe you haven't contributed. Or maybe
I know that their flights are cheap.
their
prices. Would that be a
yes.
differentiator in this case?
What is?
Because I know EasyJet's also cheap. So
yeah, there's two things here, but I think their biggest differentiator is not necessarily that the prices are cheap. They are brilliant in terms of pricing strategy. They are very, very good. Their core competence is probably pricing strategy. So they'll give us, in terms of their brand promise, is low fares. So they get that across in their messaging. But actually, what they are very good at is, you know, pricing. So if they start out with a plane, you find that the seats are pretty cheap, and then as the plane fills up, their pricing will adjust so that actually the seat prices become more expensive. And then if they still got some availability, and then the prices will no doubt come back down again. But pricing is a great point, and they're very, very good to very differentiate around that. That's the strategic intent. Great answer. What else?
Their location, their airports.
Where are these airports?
Not where you ever want to be.
So when you fly into London, where are you likely to end up?
Luton.
Luton.
Stansted. Yeah. So they go to more provincial airports. If you go to Barcelona, it's likely Barcelona Ruiz, which is about 70 kilometers away from Barcelona. If you go to Milan Malpensa, it's another 50 or 60 k's from actually city centre. So they've negotiated with their airports. You're not going to go to the expensive airports, and they imagine they have really cheap landing slots. So that's a real point of differentiation. One more, Connie, you can come up with one now.
I like it. So I think there's two things on the photo. You said they fly the same aircraft, so the entire fleet of Ryanair is the same aircraft, and that means that they only have to train the pilots on one set of gear. Also, maintenance is the same across them all. And then I think the other thing is that they don't hook up to the air bridges, which drives me crazy, but it shows you again that, you know, the aircraft, the air bridges, is all about running really efficiency with a focus on cost.
Definitely. So I think there's 2 points in this photograph. Number one is that these are all consistent 737s. That's the whole fleet is around that. That also gives Michael O'Leary huge buying power, because he's only buying into that with that. Secondly, there's a few folk that are queuing up to the second from the upplay. They have you queuing up on the runway before even people have come off the previous plane. It's the boarding is about to close. Well, hang on, it's not. You kind of haven't even got the previous off first. But their systems are again designed like Southwest Airlines to get a very quick turnaround. You know, they're trying to turn this plane around in 25 minutes. If they can get 8 flights a day out of this plane, they are making a significant amount of money. And that's how their model works. And again, I suppose the final promise that we'll look at in a minute is guaranteeing you, not guaranteeing you, but making it clear that you are going to arrive in your destination on time. So it's not just lots of flights, but they will tell you the whole time, here's another Ryanair flight that's arrived on time, or within, you know, so many minutes of being on time. So there's their focus around that. So all of those great answers, and again, all give this Ryanair a point of differentiation that ultimately makes them the most profitable airline in Europe. Now, we might love them, we might hate them, depending where you are. Michael O'Leary has got what his brand promises are: lots of flights, low fares, lots of destinations, and arrive on time. He will not be promising that you're going to have an amazing experience or lots of amazing food or, you know, amazing seats. That's not what their gig is. You know, that go to Singapore for that, you know, but that's not what we do. And everyone knows that. It's almost like an anti-brand promise. You got on the one hand the brand promise, and then the sort of, again, on the flip side, the anti-brand promise is you will not find this as part of that. And it's only till recently, never had a customer service director. So I think it's only in the last few years that they brought that in as well. So those are our differentiating activities. Number 6 is all around our secret sauce. Yeah, what is our X factor? What is going to give us an underlying advantage in our category that, if we can understand that, gives us a 10 times to 100 times competitive advantage? And when you discover your secret sauce, if you ever discover it, for a while you keep this hidden. You don't even probably, you know, put it on the one-page plan. This is something that you recognize is going to give you a significant competitive advantage around that. So I guess there's a number of organizations that we've seen in the last 7 or 8 years that have come from nowhere to totally dominate their category. And the one I'm just going to have a quick look at now is Uber. Uber, really 10 years ago, no one ever heard. If you wanted to go and get from A to B in London, you had to jump on a black cab. That was it. But Uber recognized that actually black cabs, if you thought about value proposition, you're looking to get from A to B. Well, they might not necessarily be where you are, and it's really difficult to held down if you're in a state in London, or if it's chucking it down with rain, there's no taxis around. And actually, it's really difficult, to go and pay for somebody, more often. You didn't have cash. They didn't make it easy for you to pay. So Uber not only made it easy for you to find a cab, for a cab to tell you when it's going to arrive, they made it ridiculously easy to be able to pay them. And you knew exactly how much your money was going to be, how much your ride was going to cost, all these things. Now, whether you love them or loathe them, again, Uber, had their detractors. They were able for a while to get a 10x competitive advantage in the category. Just grew significantly. And it did take the black cabs a while to catch on, because they just say, well, these guys are going to go away at some stage, they will just disappear. And then the black cabs then had to change their model, because if they didn't change, then I think they would have become irrelevant around that. So it's about having that sort of X factor. So again, this is about taking the time out to really get in-depth understanding of what's going on in your category. If you could come up with one underlying solution that was going to blow everything away, what would that look like? And then make that your secret sauce. One few things to talk about is this notion, again, this comes from the notion of your profit per X that Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great, talks about. And this is, again, if you could understand what is your X in your business, and then you're able to replicate that is going to then drive your economic engine. That's going to drive your business growth. And let's go back to Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines, like many airlines at the time, were looking at different areas, from profit per passenger, there was profit per seat, there's all sorts of different profit per airport. But the profit per X that they settled on is profit per plane. So their X was plane, and therefore they knew that profit per plane, if they could make money from every single plane by having it fly and doing 8 flights a year, I'm sorry, not a year, a day, that would be the key metric that drove their economic engine. And then that metric underlined all of their thinking. How do we improve this particular profit? How do we make this plane more profitable? How do we make you being able to buy the fuel more efficiency? How do we get the engines to become more economical around the plane? How do we come up with solutions that can turn the plane around more quickly? So it's understanding your X that's underpins this. And Jim Collins, so this is probably the one business model I'm going to share with you today, talks about the hedgehog concept. And the hedgehog concept informs another term that you may or may never heard of before, which is Jim talks about your big, hairy, audacious goal, your BHAG, that you're going to do for your industry. It really hones into, what are you deeply passionate about? What can you be the best in the world at? And then what drives your economic engine? I'm just going to bring Connor back in again, because Connor, you probably, I know that you work done together, you have got some sort of BHAG, but it'd be good just to give a perspective from Liars on where you see the company in each of these different circles.
Yeah, sure. The goal has changed a little bit given the capital environment that we're in at the moment.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, maybe start in the middle and then I'll work back out, because we were shooting until the capital markets changed to raise enough capital to scale the business to be the fastest drinks startup to unicorn status, which is $1 billion US valuation. That required a huge amount of external capital and a significant loss model for our P&Ls, which, given where the financial markets are at the moment, we are not easily able to access capital on that basis anymore. So probably not a good goal to have in the middle. The goal should have been build the best non-alcoholic drinks business in the world. And one of the consequences of that could have been that we would therefore reach unicorn status. But to get to the outside circles, what are we deeply passionate about? Well, look, we're not a preachy business. We don't ever sit here and say, look, drinking alcohol is bad. We firmly believe that as people reevaluate their relationship with their health, their well-being, and as part of that with alcohol, that they still want really good, high-quality adult drinks, and we're really deeply passionate about providing those to people in as many formats of traditional spirits that taste like alcohol as we possibly can. What can we be the best in the world at? Well, we have the best tasting liquids. We've now won over 400 major medals across global spirits awards. So we know we've got the best liquids, and we also have the biggest range. A lot of our competitors just play in the gin space, like Gordon's, like Tanqueray, because it's relatively easy to de-alcoholize botanicals, get a gin style product. We have changed that completely, and we now have 25 different spirit proxies within our range. As I mentioned before, everything from gin, we have 3 rums, we have a amaretto alternative, absinthe, you name it. We've got tequila as well, and the whole idea and part of our core brand positioning is, you can stay spirited, but you can drink free with Lyres, basically. So
what's the name of your company?
It's called Lyres, Lyres, named after the Australian lyrebird. So Google the lyrebird and David Attenborough, and basically the lyrebird's nature's greatest mimic. We're an Australian founded business. The lyrebird's native to Australia, and we call it pay homage, but basically we're mimicking the flavor of alcohol without the alcohol. And Neil, what was the last box there? Sorry.
What drives your economic engine?
That's an interesting one. We've gone out there, and as I mentioned before, part of our plan was to go big, go hard. What's driving our engine now is we scale quicker than any other brand on the planet. We're now in 100 different markets. Not even Gordon Zero is anywhere close to that at the moment. That scale allows us to open conversations now with retailers and consumers that no other brand can do. So we can sign global partnerships with Hilton, with IHG, with all the major hotel chains, and our competitors can't do that. And that gives us a real point of competitive advantage, but also, our consumer loyalty, and the fact that, for a lot of people, we've got a really passionate core of consumers who have completely changed their relationship with alcohol. And look at our products as being something that really helps them to do that. There's people who have had problems with alcohol who are now abstaining, but the bigger market for us is moderators, and just offering people a really delicious adult beverage for whenever they're not drinking.
Excellent.
Well, longer answer than you wanted.
No, I would expect nothing less, for somebody deeply passionate about their brand. Perhaps you could put how the guys can find you now that you've given such a plug into the chat bar, because I think everyone's kind of sensitive or tempted in that respect. Okay, just a few minutes to go. So I think we've just gone through the Seven Strata of Strategy, and this fits into the one-page strategic plan, which I'm sure we'll be looking at a future webinar. But in essence, most of the thinking that we've talked about around the Seven Strata strategy, you can see here where we've got the brand promises, they'll go into there, where we've got the big, hairy, audacious goal, where we bring in the profit per X, and then those differentiating activities, they come into the key thrusts and capabilities. The sandbox or core customer finds its way into the one-page plan just here as well. So I think that is pretty much what I wanted to go through on today's call. As I said, we will send out some of the slides you can see here, almost kind of what we prepared earlier for Ryanair in terms of the words they own, cheap flights, punctuality, their core customer in terms of where they're going, where their destinations are. Interestingly, they don't just do flights now, they actually also do car hire, hotels, and insurance. Their brand promise, punctuality, the most flights on time in Europe, lots of destinations. I think Nigel picked up on that. And then increasingly, interestingly, not one necessarily around pricing, but becoming the greenest airline in Europe. And I think we'll see an awful lot more of that in due course. Find a cheaper fare in 3 hours and we'll refund the difference. That's their catalytic mechanism. Wheels Up is their one-phrase strategy. I think we picked up most of these when we went through this. I think maybe this differentiating activity that they're talking about now as greenest airline is something to look out for. And then profit per plane, and then becoming Europe's most valuable airline. Is that their BHAG? I'm not quite sure on that. Good. So just a couple of minutes ago, are there any questions at all? Leon, any questions in the chat bar? Or if anyone wants to put any questions in the chat bar, I think it also leaves to say, I think those two tools, Leon, the one-page strategic plan and the Seven Strata strategy, they're in the chat bar.
They are now both in the chat bar, yeah. So click in those and download them. You've got them to take away.
And what we'll also do, we'll post those out to you in the follow-up notes from today's webinar as well.
Yeah. Neil, could you share the Ryanair completed template as well? That'd be quite interesting, just for inspiration.
Yes. What we'll do, we'll just send out the pack. Actually, I have got a PDF. That's probably easiest, Connor. A PDF of this what I've just caught here. So we'll send that out. And again, it gives it a good. And I said we did it as a team. I think Mike, if I was to send it to Michael O'Leary, he might push back and say that bit's rubbish or that bit's spot on. But I think in the main we wouldn't be far away.
Yeah.
So any questions from anybody? The one question that often gets asked about this, Neil, is just who should complete the Seven Strata document? Yeah,
I think when we're working with most of our clients, we tend to work on it with the senior team, but it also can come out with, you've got a marketing department, they're probably going to have a vested interest in it. I think even speaking to your core customers, as I said earlier on, Leon, just to get a feel for the value proposition, what are the things that they are looking for in terms of those gain creators or pain relievers that you want to take account of. And now is an ideal time to do it, because as you start thinking about your plans for 2023, sharpening up your marketing strategy, being really, really clear about what it is that you're going to do, the impact you're going to make, the difference you can make, is all about then being distinctive. So again, this is a great time of year to begin working on this, dusting it down again, and then that one-page plan that I talked about here is starting to get that complete for 2023. So we're now starting with lots of our clients over the next couple of months, getting all this work done. So when they hit the button on the 1st of January, they've got all the thinking is taken care of, all the plans, all the activity, all the key priorities for the year ahead, and more importantly, the next 90 days have all been agreed, which just allows you then to get into full execution mode and then go and execute with vigor and energy against that. So good question. One more question, and then we'll wrap up.
Doesn't look like there's any other questions. Neil's just teed up very nicely that our next webinar is on the 2nd of Feb, and it's going to be focused on getting ready for 2023, which will be delivered by Stuart Ross, who is a best-selling author and scaling up coach, focused on leadership. So he will present tools and strategies to get you into the best position possible to thrive in 2023.
Beautiful. I think, again, Stuart is also behind the Scaling Up Book Club as well. You can see a bit more information about this. We'll send out a bit more notification about the Scaling Up Book Club, and just the whole journey. Our whole passion, our sort of reason for being is to recognize that very many companies today, there's probably going to be many thousands of companies that start up across the UK, but very, very few scale up. And that's what we're about. We want to make sure that more people achieve their dreams able to successfully scale, make an impact the communities they serve, the employees they're going to create around that. So thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to host this webinar. See a few old friends again, a few new faces as well. Good luck on your journey, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Everybody. Thanks, Neil.
Thank
you.
you.